Hi, everybody, and welcome to our first critique of Milestone 2. So, we're adding some new concepts this week to build on what we covered last week. So, last milestone, what we looked at was the three properties of color. So, here's our exercise that we worked on. So, hue is just simply the color itself, the name of the color, orange, blue, red, purple, that's how we refer to hue. And then value is just simply the lightness or darkness of a color. And then saturation is when we add in the idea of how we can manipulate one hue to be either really bright and intense and clear, um, and how we can what's called desaturate. You can think of that as like graying something out. It's a mixture of white and black that is added to a color, and that makes it less intense or more muted. It kind of has a sort of a softer look to it, whereas really saturated colors are very intense. Okay, so we also looked at tints, shades, and tones. So these are all terms that, it's easy to forget them, but if you do forget them during the class, head back into milestone 1, in the learning path, and just do remind yourself of that because we will be using those terms a lot in all of our assignments ahead. So really good foundation. The other thing we looked at is what is a monochrome, which is the first color scheme that we're looking at. And remember, monochrome, this is a monochrome in here, which is that we've got one single hue, and everything that we are using in this particular series of swatches is based on that single hue. Now, what we're doing for this week is we're actually adding to our understanding of color schemes, and we're adding the second color scheme, which is analogous. So we're adding that. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but that's the second color scheme that we're going to be looking at. And we're kind of going in you could say, a certain type of logical order. We're starting with the simplest color scheme, which was the monochrome, one hue, and then we're going to the analogous, which is, let's just take a look at analogous here. So analogous is really still a very kind of like very um, harmonious color scheme because it's based on a section of the color wheel that's all adjacent. So here's an example of a analogous, which is red, orange, and yellow all together. And in general, so they're always beside each other. In general, it's like 2 to 3. I think of it as 2 to 3 hues on the color wheel. I think that our online lecture will talk about it in relation to um, 3 hues, but in general, it's more of because color wheels can actually there's different types of color wheels. Some have more complex, divisions of color, but in general, it's sort of like where you move across a few different hues. You don't want to go too far. You want to sort of stick within a certain kind of range of hues, a small range, but it's a sort of a small, you could even say like maybe a quarter of a chunk of the color wheel. Um, Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say here, so let's get started. Okay, and there's still actually even a few more things that we're actually learning about this week, which is, first of all, color wheels. And so we're exploring 3 different color wheels here, the traditional, the additive, and the subtractive. And there's a lot of similarities between them. The main difference is really their application, I would say, for our purposes. Additives is referred to the RGB color system, the red, green, and blue. Those are the primaries. And additive is anywhere that you would be working with the idea of color as light. I always think of the theater or concert lighting as really employing additive color, like an understanding of that. And then subtractive is the CMYK model, which is really related to printing, the graphic design process of actually printing the printing inks. Whereas the traditional color wheel is, I would say, the one that we tend to refer to the most when we understand what are, color schemes and understanding color is the traditional model right here. Which is used for pigments and any type of physical materials. It's sometimes called the artist color wheel. Um, And it tends to be the most practical out of all the color wheels. These are slightly more theoretical, and you know, the traditional color wheel, when you look at it, you think, oh, these colors look kind of a little bit more muted than these. But I think that's just sort of, I'm not quite sure why people create the traditional wheel this way, because it actually can be um, filled with brighter colors. As a painter, I know that you can buy very saturated colors these days. So again, I think it's just some kind of convention that people have used. Okay, but in any case, what you're doing is creating these traditional and analogous and subtractive wheels. And the main thing here is just to put the warmest color in the 12 o'clock position, make sure that you're filling in the center. The center section is what would happen if you mixed all of the colors together, and you would get this different center. The white is the unique one. Its light is actually it creates all of the colors blended together creates white. It's the different one, whereas the subtractive and the traditional are quite similar. Okay, all right. So I think the most important thing here too is understanding analogous. So analogous color wheel we talked about a little bit before. What you're doing is you're taking, and so for this one, this is still what would be called a monochrome. So what you want to do is you want to just take, so the assignment asks us to keep within the warm or the cool colors for the analogous. So you could say, take this red one and you could go over, to here, or you could go over here. This is like the borderline between warm and cool, but you could go to the purple as well. But you could just go here, for example. So I would just change that one out. Let's see, warm to cool. Definitely this is warm, which is great. And so you're going actually towards yellow here. So you want to go actually towards the cool colors. So cool colors are red, green, and blue. So you want to just tweak that one. Analogous, that looks great. And I like how you're going from light through some changes in saturation all the way to a darker color. That'll work great. Warm to cool. That looks really good. Yes. And analogous interval. So what I would say with this one, a couple things. So you're starting here in yellow. So you want to, or green, I should say, you want to go just to this color or to this color. This is like really another one of the on the boundary colors. It's between a little bit between yellow, or pardon me, warm and cool. So you could go either way. Okay. So it looks like you went maybe a little far here to be an analogous. And then what I might do as well is go a little darker here. Just even like once you choose your color, let's say it's this one, just go a little darker. And then warm to cool interval, warm to cool. That looks great. Okay, good. So just a few changes here. This assignment is a little bit, there's a lot of different moving parts in here. So I think there's always a few things that we can work on. So the reason why we're, doing this exercise is because first of all, we're learning about some of these terms, but we're also going to be applying our scales into the next assignment and experimenting with it in different ways. So we're just sort of setting ourselves up to have some colors to work with. Okay, Joe. All right. Yeah, so starting with your color wheels, they look good. And let's see. So analogous. So for this one, yeah, so this is definitely, so you're going from here to here, which looks really, I think you correctly have the hues. What I would do here with this one is maybe tweak where you have chosen the red from on the color picker. Because if you look at the scale, when I looked at this, I wasn't quite sure it was an analogous, because it looks to me like it could have been a monochrome. And the reason why is just because of where you chose the red, is that it's in this, sort of kind of in a slightly muted dark area of the reds, where it can sort of like masquerade as a lot of different colors, warm colors. So what you might want to do is just sort of go up maybe a little bit higher, but also maybe towards the saturated color just a wee bit. so that when, you can see how it's still dark, but you can see right here how now we've got more red in there. And when you place it in there, then we'll see, oh, it's going from red to orange, if that makes sense. Okay. Let's see, warm to cool. That looks good with your hues. What I might do here too is maybe choose one side here. Maybe this side. It's always good to go with your cool side if when you're doing this, and make it this one maybe a wee bit darker so that you know it it we can go from light to dark. It You'll see when we get to the next exercise how it will help quite a bit with that. Just emphasize it a little bit more. This is lighter, this is a bit darker. Maybe just push this a little darker or this side a little. You could do the same with this too. You could make this a wee bit lighter if you wanted to. Okay, analogous. This looks really good. You're going from green to blue. You can clearly see it. And you've got good changes here in your value and saturation. Warm to cool, that looks really good too. I might maybe make one of these sides a little darker, maybe make your warm side a little darker. It's off again, just like before, it's often better to make your cool side a little darker than your warm side because it'll create depth in the next assignment. I know that doesn't make sense now, but it will make a difference. So you may want to just tweak that a little bit more. Analogous, yeah, this looks really good. So you're going from purple to red, nice. Warm to cool, this looks really good as well in terms of definitely warm to cool. And again, I might just emphasize making the cool side a wee bit darker so that the warm is lighter and the cool is darker. Okay, nice job understanding all of the different terms and maybe just a few changes to make. Oh, and just one last thing too. It looks like you have submitted the Photoshop file. It's no problem for me personally because I have Photoshop. I can open it up, and I'm sure most folks in class also have Photoshop, so it's not really a problem. But just to honor the assignment, you do want to just make sure to submit this as a JPEG just make sure you do that for the final submission. Let's see, in Photoshop, when you're in the software, you can just go up to File and Save As, and just from the Format menu, select JPEG. So, in general, like we save Photoshop files for ourselves or Illustrator files, because then we can make changes to them later because they're editable files. But when we send files, let's say to a customer or client, we would always send it to them in something like a JPEG. Maybe there's other formats we might use, JPEG, maybe a PDF. But a JPEG would be, a good file format because pretty much everybody has the ability to review a file like that, whereas Photoshop files are only for folks who have Photoshop. So that's again one of the reasons that we practice doing that. Okay, Deidreona, yeah, these assignments, or this class in particular, I think is so awesome in terms of just learning about color, in terms of how colors work, and the color harmonies that we're studying are really, really terrific. When I work with color now, I tend to not think about what color harmony I'm using. I really just pick colors that I like and think look good together because, I work intuitively, I tend to. But then I always find out that it is a color harmony when I'm finished. Maybe I'll have like maybe it'll be a little bit outside of that. But in general, the color harmonies, we have them for a reason, and they're really, useful. Like if you're trying to find colors that work together, you can pull out your color harmonies and start looking at them. Okay, so let's start with your color wheels. They look good. And for analogous, so I would say for this one, I might go even, well, I was going to say maybe a wee bit further along. Well, I don't know. I'm going to change that. I think you're using it very accurately from this wheel. That's just my preference to maybe want to make it a bit bigger. But I think, yeah, let's just keep it there. I think the orange and the red are there, and you're going from light to dark, so that's good. Um, Warm to cool interval, that looks really good. Analogous, yeah, that looks excellent with the going from lighter to darker. Warm to cool. So for this one, so both of these sides would actually be considered warm. So yellow and red are warm colors, as is orange. So what you want to do is just leave this side as it is, and then just take this side and move it into, if you want to, so you could, the closest to yellow is you could just move it into green because then you're in a cool color. But anywhere in here, the yellow, or pardon me, the green, the blue, and the purple are cool colors. So you just want to tweak that one. Analogous, this looks really good, nice. And warm to cool, that looks great too. So this is the only one you need to change. Yeah, good job. Okay, Chris, all right, traditional, additive, and subtractive, those look good. And this looks good too, orange to red, warm to cool. So with this one, you definitely have warm to cool hues here. I might suggest with this one too, maybe bringing it just a little bit up. You could take it sort of maybe up in here a little bit more so you see a little bit more of that purple. Because right now it's a little bit hard to tell what colors are in here. It almost looks like it could be going from red to dark red. Okay, so just bring in a little bit more of that purple. You can sort of see here. As you go through here, you can sort of see, oh yeah, there's a lot of purple there showing. So you can keep it in the dark realm, the dark area, but with that added purple. Analogous, that looks good. Warm to cool, this looks good. And analogous, good. Warm to cool, that looks good. I might just take this side here and make it just a bit darker. You don't have to go too much farther, just to emphasize that darkness. And again, next time, our next exercise, if you do end up choosing this color exercise, you will get a lot more powerful depth by using the light, adding light to dark to this a little bit, just emphasizing that a little bit more. All right, nice job. Okay, Elisa, let's see, your color wheels look good. Analogous interval looks good. It looks like you've also got orange to red, warm to cool. What I might do with this one is what I suggested previously, is bring that into a little bit more into, just with, so you can see more of the underlying hue. Bring it up a little bit so you see that, so that when you see this, you really clearly see, oh yeah, we're going from warm to cool. Like there's no question about that or ambiguity. Let's see, analogous, that looks good. Warm to cool, that looks good. Analogous and warm to cool. Yeah, I think that looks good too. Okay. I think that's the only thing that you need to do here, is just to tweak that one a little bit more. Okay, Cassie, let's see your color wheels. Yeah, they look good. Analogous, so you've got kind of a purple to a blue, warm to cool. Analogous, kind of a blue, teal to a green, warm to cool. That looks good. And analogous, sort of a pinkish to kind of a brick red, and warm, kind of a pinkish color to a kind of a sort of a navy color. And yeah, all of these look great. You have done a nice job here at also working with the value and saturation with those changes that we talked about, light to dark. Naturally, you'll get the desaturated colors in here when you blend them. So, okay, nice job. You don't need to make any changes here.